Why don't you show us some of the tools of the trade and describe them to us?
Okay.
Prove that you're a diabetic.
This should look very familiar to most people. I am hoping to become a pumper soon, mainly not because I dislike my insulin pen, because I actually find it quite convenient, but just in order to get more precise control. I think I'm realizing that my quote-unquote honeymoon is ending, and in order to be able to really get on top of those carb ratios, a pump would probably be helpful. So I'm actually using a junior pen because when I was diagnosed nearly 4 years ago now, I was very, very insulin sensitive. I needed half-unit increments. And there's, as far as I know, only one pen on the market that actually offers half units, and that is the Novo Nordisk Junior Pen.
And they still make that?
They make it's for children.
Okay.
And adults who are...
People have contacted me, where are our half-unit pens? Because others have been taken off. I think maybe BD had one that doesn't have it anymore.
Okay, so it's good to know you cannot get less than a single unit. You can't just take a half a unit. But anything above one, you can go 1.5, 1.5.
Okay.
And so that's worked quite well for me, especially for corrections in the beginning. You know, I would need 1.5 units or whatnot. I find it very handy, easy to use. Again, I have nothing against it, but...
can you demonstrate how it works and squirt off a couple of units?
So here I sort of cheated because I still have the needle on there, but the idea is that you take a fresh needle each time.
You can just put that one back on if you want.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Comes with little tiny 31 gauge needles.
That's the half. They're not very long.
They're very small.
Yeah,
I'll show you. You just screw it on here, and there it is. It's got a tiny bit of... And you use the little window here to dial up your dose.
Okay.
And then you just essentially, usually abdomen, stick it in your abdomen, press it down in order to get the dose in. With this, unlike with syringes, you actually need to hold it in for a minute or so.
Like count
to make
to
sure that
3 or something?
They say count to 8 slowly. But I'm very impatient, so I count to 8 quickly 3 times because I can't do anything slowly.
You are pretty buzzed, Amy. I can tell. You're like going here.
I'm too busy to count slowly. So you got to leave it in because it all needs to come through. Well, versus a syringe, when you plunge it, it immediately. But in this case, it has to sort of get through apparently the filter system here. So
now I still use a syringe. I guess I'm a little bit of a doubting Thomas there.
Well. Then again, I take Lantus, like you, for my long-term, my long-acting insulin, and I have here. But I also had to get special syringes that had the half-unit increment, which these are from BD.
Oh, they have a half-unit BD syringe?
Yeah, so this is all the stuff they use for children, obviously, who can't take the high doses, right? So I have these, and for my nighttime insulin, I just take this every evening before I go to bed, try to be consistent about the time, and that's the Lantus. And I find that if I take it at the same time every night, the curve sort of, evens out. I was, in the early days, just sort of carefree about it and would take it sometimes at 9 o'clock, sometimes at 11 o'clock, sometimes at 12. And it definitely made a difference in terms of where I was at in the morning. So I try to be very consistent with that. That's
great.
The trick.
Some of our readers have found splitting the dose and taking it every 12 hours is even better for some people. But
what I'm discovering slowly is that it's all about consistency. If you can sort of have a regimen and do pretty much the same things at the same times, and that would include eating the same amount of carbs at the same times, which is not always practical for everyone. But if you were to do that, you would probably have better control.
How many carbs do you eat at each meal?
So I actually eat my most carbs for breakfast, which I know is not necessarily the most kosher thing, but I struggle with this because I enjoy carbs for breakfast. And so now I eat about 60 carbs for breakfast. Usually about 15 of those are milk, though, because I like a nice, cafe latte in the morning. And then I'll have a small muffin and maybe a little bit of fruit or something. And then, lunchtime varies because sometimes I'm out and I'll just have a salad, but occasionally I'll want something carbier than that.
So the 60 carb breakfast, how many units do you take?
I take 4 units.
Okay.
So I'm at 1 to 15 in the morning. Currently, this changes over time, obviously.
Right.
And then for me personally, my ratios get tighter over the day because my Lantus is slowly wearing off, right? So for lunchtime, for example, I'm at 1 to 12, and then at dinner time I'm at 1 to 10.
1 to 10 what?
My insulin to carb ratio.
Okay. So how many carbs do you have for lunch?
So lunch, probably usually about 45.
And then you'll take another...
And then I'll take...
3 units?
So I take 3 units, about 48, yeah. That gives me a little wiggle room there. But there are days where I just have like a Caesar salad and then I won't need to, I could do the low carb thing.
And take no insulin.
and take. Well, I found that I might need 1 unit because sauces and things are kind of hidden in there, and so that you usually need a baseline of like 1 unit because somewhere in there you're getting a little bit of carb.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I've learned over time because I would think, oh, I'm eating something like meatballs with sauce or something, and you think, well, it's not a carby meal, but you're getting almost 10 units of carb just in the sauce and whatnot. You know?
Right.
So.
And so show us your meter now.
So I've used different meters, but the one that I like best so far is the Freestyle Flash. The reason I like it is it's cute, for one thing, and it's very, very small, and it requires the smallest blood drop on the market, as far as I know.
Some 3 microliters, I think.
Yeah, so it's really nice because when I did eventually try a different meter, I was really surprised at how I would have to squeeze and poke and try to push out blood, whereas with this, just the tiniest drop will be picked up by these side-loading test strips, which I'm going to show you.
Okay.
So the test strips, a lot of them from other companies are front-loading, so they have that little piece little bit in the front that pulls in the blood, but you need quite a bit of blood. And with these, if you can see, 2 little side areas, and you can just sort of, if you have a tiny drop of blood, you just hold it right on there, and it'll suck right in.
Okay.
So I personally like that. I mean, I think these things are very subjective, what you feel most comfortable with. But I also like this because it has a nice backlight. I don't know if you can see that.
How many seconds does that take?
It only takes 3 seconds, I think, or 5.
That's
3
fast.
or 5 seconds, very fast. And it also has a fairly long amount of time to allow you to get the blood on there. So you know how in some cases you're rushing and you think, if I miss it, I get an error message, and then I have to throw out the test strip. And so this gives you some time. It has a nice backlight, and it also has this feature where when you have the test strip in, and once it's been in there for a couple of seconds, you can push this light button, and it has a little light coming out the front. So you can see, so I've used this so much when I'm in the movies or something and I want to test.
That was my next question. It has a flashlight?
It has a little flashlight coming out the front, so you can see the test strip.
I did not know that.
You can see, to get the blood on there. And, again, as a real-life person with diabetes, this is a hugely helpful feature because I'm in a dark car a lot, or I'm in the movie somewhere, and I don't want to have to leave or, flip on some big light, and it's very helpful.
That was my next question, is what are some of the wackiest places you've tested?
Oh, I can do unbelievable things behind the wheel of my car.
Me too.
I can test, inject, and talk on the phone at the same time while my kids are screaming and I'm driving. It's a little scary sometimes.
You have an automatic transmission, I hope.
Yes. But gosh, where have I tested? Everywhere you can imagine. In the middle of, recitals. I've tested actually on my stationary bike, doing it.
At the gym?
At the gym.
On airplanes?
In aerobics class, I'll just crouch down sometimes and do it if I feel like I'm feeling a little strange. Oh, airplanes, of course, yeah. And I've done it in business meetings underneath the table because not that I'm embarrassed, but it sort of tends to stop the conversation if you pull out this contraption and people say, "Well, what is that?" And then everybody wants to talk about the diabetes, and I don't necessarily want to all the time. So
you had that good retort that you mentioned in the restaurant, like you should be glad it's not you, or.
Oh,
when people say...
So here was a very typical scene. I was in a bar in San Francisco with a friend of mine who happens to be an endocrinologist. Or actually, he's not. He's a doctor. But in any case, he was sitting next to me, and I pulled this thing out. And I'm thinking, well, here's someone super familiar with diabetes, so I don't need to be subtle about this. Right. So I open up my meter, and I start testing. And the bartender comes by and looks at it and says, "Well, that's intimidating." And I looked at him and said, "Why should it be intimidating? You don't have to do it." It's just surprising the reactions you get sometimes.
Yeah.
Any form of blood, and I guess before I was diagnosed, I might have felt the same way. You see somebody doing something with blood, and you immediately recoil. But it's such a tiny drop, and it's sort of like it's not contagious. I'm not bothering you, so leave me alone.